2, 1.
Would like to call to order the reconvened meeting recessed from Tuesday, June the 2nd. This is the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners Budget Workshop. Welcome, everyone. It's good to have everybody joining us again today for the third time this week. So we've spent quite a bit of time together. Before we begin with our agenda, I'll ask if County Manager Mike Downs has any announcements before we begin our presentation from the Economic Development Corporation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep, I think the process has gone very well so far. We've answered most of your questions. We've had some other questions come in via email or a couple phone calls since Tuesday, and we think we gave sufficient answers from there. So tonight you will have some presentations, as you know, from some of our outside agencies or partners that starting with the EDC. And again, the EDC, the county funds a good portion of their budget, and then they definitely are a partner as their employees are considered county employees as well. So we'll start with them. We'll move on to the CVB. Again, the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Just remember at the end of that, you will need to call for a motion to approve their budget so that they can move forward there. And then the fire districts will come on, are not, there will be no fire districts. We hadn't had any requests for any individuals, but the fire marshal, Steve Langer, will be on if you have any specific questions for him. And then we'll go from there. If we'll take a break, if you guys choose to, or we can continue just general board discussion after that. So we are ready to move if you are on to the Economic Development Corporation's presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Carney, we will turn it over to you.
All right. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Manager Downs, I want to thank you all so much for taking some time and allowing us to come and present to you to make a formal budget request. And this is on behalf of not only the EDC team, but also its board of directors. So what we'll do is we'll take you through an agenda that will detail both our year to date for this fiscal year of 20, and then we'll talk further about what our upcoming year looks like and some particular items that we're very keenly engaged on and workflows as it will be presented. So first we need to start with our mission. So our mission, and this is maybe less for our elected leadership as well as staff, and more for those that may view this later, is to increase the quality of life in Cabarrus County through the creation of high impact jobs and new tax investments. Our corporation lives this mission each and every day. We believe that every Cabarrus County resident that wants a job, that's interested in employment, we want to find opportunities to drive new employment growth into the community, successful, sustainable jobs, and then we also want to make sure that both our counties, municipalities, have the resources that are necessary for them to be able to operate as they see fit, which is in case new tax investments. So as we all already know, many of the tax revenues generated by business development, new businesses coming into the area, are the key foundational revenues that allow us to provide the services that are provided throughout the community. So my team, we live this mission, and we're keenly focused on this every day. Our team, as you already know, once again, this is perhaps more for those that are listening or will be listening. You have myself, Robert Carney, I serve as the executive director. You have Paige Castrodale, who is our existing industry director. You have Samantha Grass, who is our recruitment project manager, and Chanel Varner, who is our economic development coordinator. So that is our team. I will say that for both Paige Castrodale and Chanel Varner, this is their first full fiscal year in operation. So it's been an exciting and dynamic year for our team. Both Samantha Grass and I are kind of the old dogs now at the EDC. But I can say in my 15 years of economic development experience, this is probably one of the most talented teams I've ever had the pleasure to work with. The way in which they approach each and every day, the way in which their creativity, their dedication to the job, the way in which we have built ourselves into a cohesive unit. I hope that this council or that my elected leadership is seeing that, because it has truly been dynamic, and I cannot be more excited for the futures of each and every one of those individuals and what we're going to be able to accomplish moving forward. So fiscal year 20 in review. We've to date, when we submitted this document in May. We've worked, as of May, 106 projects. The state of North Carolina, as well as the EDPNC, would tell you that we are, if not one of the most busiest, the busiest economic development county in the state of North Carolina. We're very fortunate that we work more projects than just about any other community in the entire state. Some of the averages around those numbers are each project was averaging about 338 jobs per project. 97,000 square foot was the building request, the average building request. For build-to-suits, it was approximately 33 acres. 34% of the projects work for international projects. The average investment on those projects was $77 million. And you can see the building versus site breakdown. 60% of our inquiries were buildings first. 26% were sites, and then 14% was a blend of both buildings and or sites. So this is where our projects were coming from by source. You have 53 of our projects were sourced by the EDPNC, 32 projects from the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. That's our regional business generator or regional partner. 10 of those projects were broker related. 8 of those projects were from an economic development partner, whether it be an investor or a group that we work commonly with. And then 3 projects were direct to our corporation. You can see project by industry. The vast amount of projects that we're seeing to date is in the manufacturing space. And then we have the other or unknown because it wasn't defined at the time of RFI. You see we work 10 projects that are in the office HQ, and then 9 projects that are in the distribution space. So that's from our perspective, that's where we want to see the largest portion of our activities is driven towards manufacturing. We've all kind of collectively stated that that is a strategic target of this community county-wide, and we're really keenly focused on those areas of opportunity. Number of projects by location. This is a direct correlation of product. So the amount of real estate, whether that be sites or buildings available, has a direct correlation to the number of projects that are looking at each community. So as you can see, City of Concord, a year ago, I could say had approximately 3 million square feet of speculative development space available. And from that, you can see they had the lion's share of activity, and they also now have the grounds at Concord, which is a 2100 acre industrial campus. You see Kannapolis had 27 projects, Midland 7, Harrisburg 3, and Mount Pleasant did not have a project last year per se. Once again, that is purely driven by the real estate that we have to offer the market. So we always say if we want to increase those numbers, if we have a direct correlation of growing the number of project inquiries and activities, we first have to start with real estate offerings. What are we offering the market so that we have available product to offer them? So fiscal year 20 in review. This is July 2019 to May 2020. We've announced 820 full-time jobs created during that period of time. The investments announced were $184 million. This generates directly to the county $1.361 million in annual tax revenue after any incentives provided. That's not taking into account depreciation, but it's also not taking into account the multipliers, because the projects that we drive have a very real multiplier effect. They affect contractors, service members. They have a ripple effect across the entire county that we don't account for. As mentioned earlier, 106 RFIs worked. Of that, we were able to respond to 98 of those 106 RFIs. If we didn't respond to it, it just meant that we didn't have the right product to offer that project. And then business retention and expansion. We were able to actively engage 122 companies as of May, and we estimate that that number will be 135 before the end of this entire fiscal year. I do think it's important to note, and you can see in this presentation an asterisk that's at the bottom. By the end of our fiscal year, our actual number, and we know this with certainty, we will announce 1,187 new full-time jobs created in Cabarrus County. We will announce $276 million, so over $250 million in new tax investment generated into Cabarrus County. And those numbers are going to generate $2+ million of annual tax revenue in Cabarrus County each and every year. This isn't a number that goes away after year 2 or 3. This is a number that stays with our community every year thereafter, once a business is located and operating in community. Some of the notable projects that we had this year were Golden Home, moving both their manufacturing as well as their North American headquarters into the community. Allegiant, that's expanding their footprint as a hub in the city of Concord. They're going to be adding on multiple destinations. They're under delay with the certain circumstances that we're currently in, but we've got every confidence that once things begin to loosen up, they will begin with that expansion. General Motors, that's moved their advanced automotive and R&D facility into Cabarrus County, as well as Carvana, just to name a few projects that were highlighted throughout the year.
Hey, Robbie?
Yes.
Before you go, when you mentioned here about the investment and the totaling on and the average, do you know what the average job or average salary would be for this 1,187 jobs?
So I can tell you that based on what our county's leadership, each community's leadership, every project that we've been announcing has been wages that are over and above Cabarrus County's wage average. So we can certainly get that exact number for you about at what the average wage is. But the one thing that you can be assured of is that each and every one of those, that 1,187, are all paying full-time wages that are over and above Cabarrus County's wage average, which is it's $39,640. So each and every one of those jobs are paying wages over and above that number.
And I think that's why I was curious. I know several that we've had were considerably higher, which I think is a good thing. So.
Correct. We can find that. We can certainly get that exact number, and it's a really good point, because what our job and our responsibility to do is to always try to, that average county wage that you have for a community, we're always wanting to constantly put positive pressure on that number and drive those wages forward, because we know if we're doing that, then we're bringing about opportunities that mean real improvement for the individuals that make up Cabarrus County. So that is certainly something that we're always focused on, as far as how can we drive not only good jobs, but jobs that are driving that wage average forward as well.
Thank you.
Robbie, I have a question before we move on. In reference to the annual tax revenue, that $2 million, is that after the incentivize is over, or the incentive is over, or how do you come up with that figure?
Sure, yeah. So that's at maturity of once incentives are paid out, which most of our standard incentive policy is a 3 year. So you could say in year 4, we do have some special circumstances from a competitiveness standpoint. In order to win the project, we gave an extra year or 2. So at maximum, all of these projects that we do, it's important to note, are revenue positive day 1, because the nature of the deal is the company has to come in, spend tax, or basically increase the tax value of the county by a certain rate, and then they're getting a portion of the taxes they're paying back to themselves.
Okay.
Of that, they're just getting a portion of it. They're not getting the entirety of those taxes back. So just their very existence from day 1, we're winning in the project, because you're not only winning the jobs that are associated with it, the multipliers that come with it, but you're also winning the excess tax revenues that they generate over and above. The number we're using for this, the $2+ million, would be as if once all of those incentives have been paid out each year after that, they would be generating $2+ million in tax revenue year over year.
Right. Well, the jobs is good, and then of course whatever it took to get them here, that's all good, and those revenues are surely be used when the incentivized term is over. Mm-hmm. So it's good. That's all good. Thank you, Robbie.
Sure. Next slide. So looking ahead at the year upcoming, these are our target industry clusters. I can go ahead and tell my leadership here, these have not changed. These are based on the workplace assets that we have, or the workforce assets that we have. This is based on labor shed. This is based on our education and training that we have in community. These are based on clusters. So this is taking basically both what is a state and regional approach, and then bringing it back down to what makes the most sense for Cabarrus County. That's how we get our target industry clusters. These have not changed since last year. You can see that it's advanced manufacturing, financial services, health, logistics and distribution, information technology, and then destination entertainment. Destination entertainment is one of the few that we are in a distinct position as economic development partners to the CVB, to where Cabarrus County is such a destination for retail and tourism that we can help our partners in doing active recruitment of destination-based entities. There are not many communities across the state that have the ability to do that, but that is something that we've made a part of our program of work. Our recruitment partners are the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, or the EDPNC, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, or CRBA. They don't like being called that because it confuses with the CRVA. You have site consultants, local regional brokers, as well as consultants. And then we have our local partners like the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Rowan Cabarrus Community College, North Carolina Research Center, as well as others. And then our existing industry efforts. As we're working with our existing companies, we're trying to find supply chain gaps, we're trying to find suppliers to them, as well as growth opportunities for their companies as well. Next one. So product development. As I had mentioned, when we began our fiscal year 2020, we were sitting somewhere around $3+ million in speculative industrial property. I can tell you, as we all sit here now, we are almost completely out of industrial speculative property. We've almost absorbed that entirety in one fiscal year. Because of that, that means that this corporation and this community is going to have to get very keenly focused on how are we bringing about new industrial, whether it be spec, industrial buildings or industrial sites, so that we have future opportunity to land good employers into the community. So here are some of the ways that we want to continue to engage and really press that narrative to the community. We want to have some stakeholder groups. We want to start thinking outside of the box of how do we become much more active in the industrial development space. So to continue to engage with our product development subcommittee, we want to start, we've already been working on a countywide industrial asset evaluation. We do a product and asset visualization effort, and then we work with each land asset, whether a real estate asset, towards industrial site readiness. I've said this before, but it needs to be repeated. It is not enough just to have a very nice piece of a nice field or a piece of green grass. It actually has to be site ready for operation, meaning it has proper energy, utilities, road and infrastructure to support it before our corporation even really has the opportunity to start actively promoting that property. So there's a lot of things that go into site readiness, and we need to make sure that we're really focused on that in the year ahead. What we hope this enables, some of these initiatives, is a deeper understanding of community and wealth generation. We're trying to engage our local community on how true wealth is actually generated. And economic development is a big piece of that. We want to start countywide reporting on industrial availability and site readiness, creating pathways for product development, as well as improved ability to compete on projects. These are all the reasons why we think that product development is such an important aspect of what we're going to be doing in the years ahead. Next slide. Business retention and expansion. So many of these are ongoing work efforts that our corporation have been doing in the years past. I would like to point out that what our corporation has really been focused on over this past fiscal year, and this is certainly with the help of our team, our staff, Paige Castrodale has really kind of taken this on. We're trying to complete the entire business continuum. So what you see in these bullets listed is one particular item called Grow Cabarrus. Grow Cabarrus is basically taking what are stage 2 companies and giving them the resources to really fuel their growth. So now we're not talking about the 200, 300, 400 employee company. We're now talking about the 10, 20, 50 employee company that with a few tools, a few resources can quickly ramp up and become a very, very large scale employer. This is a project that we've launched earlier in the year. We've done a pilot program. I think we've got 4 companies that are now undergoing this program. On average, the numbers that we understand is that in folding a company into this Grow Cabarrus program, their sales increase is almost 20 to 25% in the very first year. So with these new tools and resources, they experience phenomenal growth. It's something that we're hoping can be a freestanding part of what we do in the years moving ahead. So the Grow Cabarrus engagement is a very, very important aspect of that. But outside of that, maintaining steady communication with our existing industry, work with industries to expand their operations, do industry appreciation events, and then continue to drive growth and resiliency by upskilling the workforce that these employers demand. Okay, so the next piece to that business continuum is going even smaller than the stage 2 corporation, and that's entrepreneurial development. This has been something that for years, and when we've done community-based studies, it's been identified as something that's of critical need to Cabarrus County. We're very, very proud, we're very excited that we're going to get to launch what will be an entrepreneurial development program. This is in partnership with the private sector. That partner is Flywheel, and they have intention on opening a Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship in Cabarrus County. I believe Paige Castrodale, my partner, went through this in great detail on Monday with this team. So that's something that we all collectively are really excited about. And once again, we're talking about taking your smallest entrepreneurs, individuals with great ideas, great concepts, but they don't have the resources available to begin scaling up. We're talking about working with companies at that level, stage 2 companies, and then large corporations, and therefore trying to complete that entire continuum of business development. And so this is an important aspect of what we're going to be doing in the future, and we would not be able to complete or do this if we did not have a private sector partner like Flywheel to do this for us. Just the resources needed, the lift, the cost, all of those things are truly vast. So to have a private sector partner that we can do this with is something that we think is going to be phenomenal value for all of us moving forward. And then marketing and communication. So if this council remembers, in years past, I've explained to the board that our corporation is very skilled at the activities of economic development, at working with relationships, driving economic development growth, winning deals, supporting existing industry. The place that we've fallen short, and we've admitted to it, we've known that we have, is in telling our story and telling the community, telling our various audiences what exactly we're doing, how we're doing it, why is it important. In years past, we have not been able to do that, and it's purely a bandwidth issue. We're a team of 4 individuals, all dedicated to growing our local economy, and with that, we've had very limited resources of being able to tell all the stories about what we're doing, how we're doing, why we're doing it. So we've partnered over this past year with Perry Productions, and they have been doing exactly that on our behalf. So they've been using storytelling, story mapping. They've been focused on engaging with both our internal audience, which we think of as the residents of Cabarrus County, as well as brokers, consultants that are within the community. And we've been educating them on the importance of economic development. And then we've also been talking to our external audiences, individuals that really care about economic development, Cabarrus County's narrative, and all the things that are going on. We've been doing a much increased role in talking about that. We've been talking about success stories from Cabarrus County businesses. We've been developing very targeted messaging to site consultants and brokers so that we can drive, so they know who we are as a community, and we can drive the exact type of business activity that we're looking for. We've been working on workforce development initiatives, targeted industries and data to support us, and then also available product, and we've been expanding our audience reach through through a lot of social media outlets in recent months. So this is an item that if we were to rewind the tape 12 months ago, it was on our wish list, it was on our to-do list as something to do at a high level. I can tell this council that we are now doing that at a very high level, and hopefully, Mr. Chairman and my commissioners, Mike, you all have seen kind of the results and the benefits of that outreach through various media platforms that we've been doing. Are there any questions that I can answer? I know that to try to go through who we are, what we do, how we do it, in this manner and even this format can sometimes be challenging. So please let me know if there's anything that we need to take a deeper dive into or talk a little bit further about.
I wanted to ask a question on that Grow Cabarrus program. I think you said there were 4 participants right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many target businesses there are out there that meet that criteria, and how are you guys reaching out to them and getting the word out?
Sure. No, that's a great question. So our first phase was to develop what is the pilot program. And so we were going, because it actually costs our corporation money to bring each one of these companies into that program. So phase 1 for us was just to develop the pilot, make sure that we were providing real value to the companies that we're serving with this program. And then hopefully the data share that these companies would show as far as how this has actually affected their bottom line and growing them as an organization would basically sell the program itself. So phase 1 was we were just picking the companies we knew from our existing industry work that we know are high growth potential, but all they need is a little bit more support and resource to really get them over the ledge and get them exploding as far as their growth potential. Now that unfortunately the truth is that we have a lot of various challenges with with what's taking place right now, that we're still curious about what kind of results are going to come out of this fiscal year. Nevertheless, we still believe this is the right step for the program. So once we've done this pilot, we're all going to sit down with our board of directors and kind of refine it, see how we can improve it, and see what kind of results came from developing and deploying this program into the community. And then from that next step, Commissioner Honeycutt, we'll start to deploy this countywide to businesses that meet the necessary criteria and want to fold themselves into this program. And our hope is that we're able to engage a lot more than 5-6 companies a year. We want to be able to do 10, 20 or more each year.
And what kind of services are they, and how are they obtained? Are they
Sure.
online type or direct consulting, or what kind of services?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's direct consulting with a partner that we've brought on. And so what happens is a lot of the companies that fall into this stage 2 category, the one thing that they're lacking is what's called big data marketing. Okay, so what they do is you'll take them and fold them into a program to where we have this third-party group that's working with us. We'll basically say, based on your product manufacturing capabilities, we know you have a market in these different spaces, and we know that we need to be targeting for you these different entities to begin supplying you. And what they do is they basically line them up and do very sophisticated matchmaking for the businesses to immediately grow their bottom line and start scaling them up. The problem with stage 2 companies is they're typically very limited in having these types of resources available. So what these are is we're kind of leveraging the big data resources that are available to very large scale companies. We're just making those resources available to smaller companies now.
And the National Center for Economic Gardening, what's that company through, or funded, or how is that operated?
Yeah, so basically that was an economic developer like myself that years ago realized they had gone through they had a single employer, went through a highly distressful situation where the massive employer basically did they closed down and relocated out of the community. What they did was they basically said, we're going to start investing in our companies that are here in the area, and we're going to start leveraging data to support them. So at that point in time, they did no additional active recruitment outside. Everything they focused was on their companies that they have in community. How do we grow them? How do we support them? And how do we help them? And in doing so, we're phenomenally successful. Forgive me, I don't have the numbers offhand, but they were phenomenally successful in growing, expanding, and improving the economic status of that community. And so basically, the executive director, after doing that, I believe for about 10 or 15 years, realized that this was a program that needed to be launched and leveraged nationwide. And so he started the Center for Economic Gardening, where they now make that available to communities that want to actively engage in that. And we so happen to be one of the first, I think we are the first county in North Carolina that's basically taken this on, see the value, realize the value, and want to embrace this and bring this in-house. So from a funding perspective, what they are is, it is in partnership. They're providing counsel to these businesses, third party, and for that, they're charging based on their costs that they have.
Thank you.
That might have been a long answer, and I apologize. I just want to make sure you had the backstory on it.
How long has that been going on?
I want to say that program has probably been in existence for somewhere around 7 or 8 years. But don't hold me to that. I can get you an exact date of how long. Everything that a lot of the data that we're talking about is this growth and success data comes from years of their experience of going into a community or working in partnership with an economic development entity and showing kind of results after results from their program. So that's where a lot of our data set comes from. Okay. But I can find out the exact year of existence or how long they've been in.
Well, that's fine. I just out of curiosity, I wanted to at least get a range. I did have a question over back in our book, page 5, but it's FY20 in review. And so on the surface of it, and I made notes looking at it, and then you said something interesting, but to me on the surface, it jumps out that, well, gosh, we're really only attracting manufacturers and they're only coming to Concord. And then you mentioned in your comments something, I think you said we had determined that manufacturing was the way we wanted to go, and I wasn't sure who the we was on that comment, because just on the surface, it just looks like we've got too many eggs in one basket. I mean, and it may be, the Concord piece may just be, hey, that's where the real estate is. Nobody, I'm sure there's multiple factors, but again, on the surface, it just looks like we've got too many eggs in one basket. Sure.
And frankly, what that comes down to is that's where our real estate product is right now. So you've got, in years past, you've had a thriving private sector, privately driven real estate market focused on Concord and then some in Kannapolis that you've had. And so that's why you're seeing the lion's share of activity is going to those communities. And so when an inquiry comes into our office, they're basically very specific about what they're asking for. We have to base that on what do we have to offer. Unfortunately, if a community does not have the real estate, the site with the right utilities, all the things that a project demands, then we're not qualified. We don't even have the opportunity to get in the conversation with the project. It just so happens that where most of our real estate or our opportunities lie is in the Concord and Kannapolis area. And then Midland has some, Harrisburg has some as well, but we want to actively bring about more product to those areas. So that's why you're seeing, when you say all the eggs in that basket, that's because that's where, I don't know, maybe all the chickens are. That's where our opportunity to win projects are. If they were in other areas or we had more real estate product, you would see a direct correlation in those other communities as well. As it pertains to manufacturing, and you're saying, the we behind that, there are other communities that are keenly focused on other areas. I mean, we as a community have been talking about we want to diversify into high density office development. That's a process of maturity for a community that we have to, unfortunately, you have to take the necessary steps before you're in the proper place and space to grow as an office destination. So what we have to do right now is focus on manufacturing, advanced manufacturing that is high skill, high wages, because those start to spin off a lot of those other very desirable businesses that we want to see. As far as the we is concerned, the reason why manufacturing, we focus on that is because typically they can be very, very stable employers. They typically pay good wages if you're focused on the right type of manufacturer. And they also drive really large volumes of tax revenue. A lot of manufacturers have a lot of machinery and equipment that's in those facilities that they pay taxes on, where there are some other operations we could use, logistics and distribution, for example. Typically, those are very, very large facilities. They don't drive as many jobs, and that's not always true. There's exceptions to every rule. Sometimes the wages, if you look at the average wage level in those categories, aren't nearly as high as they are in manufacturing, and their tax value that they generate from a revenue perspective, they're not filling their facility up with machinery and equipment. They're typically filling it up with supply that can be logistically moved from point A to point B. So for those reasons, we like seeing manufacturing. Typically, manufacturers like to own their real estate. They plant long-term roots. They're very involved in the community. So there's a lot of different reasons that go into the why is manufacturing important. And I don't want to think that we're haphazard about other areas of opportunity. But those are the ones that we think move the needle in the most positive way for our community.
Okay, well, I don't disagree at all that I would rather be pushing toward that than distribution. I mean, I guess there are days when the phone rings and you take the call and you don't know what's on the other end. And if it's distribution and it's a viable project, you're not going to hang up the phone without talking to them. But some of those other projects, and I guess I hear what you're saying too on if the manufacturing can help drive some of that other business, then that's fine. I just hope that's where we're headed, because some of that other business would certainly be helpful here. And the last question is, have you seen, with all of what's going on in downtown Kannapolis, have you seen any uptick in interest in getting in industry companies, people trying to get a little closer to what's going on up there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We're without divulging too much, I'm still under confidentiality at this time. We're about to announce another major project in the Kannapolis community we're really excited about. And part of that is because now you have companies that are seeing what's emerging in downtown Kannapolis, and that even if they're a manufacturer, they see what's happening downtown is truly a value add to their employee base, new housing options that are taking place. Oh, sorry, my Siri, I must have said something that triggered Siri. Sorry about that. So yes, we are seeing activity. Kannapolis is a limited community as far as some of their real estate offerings outside of downtown proper, which they're really kind of taking a development approach on that, to where they're bringing in large scale developers that are doing block by block based off of a bid process. So as that continues to grow and expand, you're going to see new opportunities emerging and new demands or desires for companies to locate in that area. So yes, I think that is certainly the future of Kannapolis that we're going to be seeing. The biggest question I have is, it's one thing to have the interest. It's great. When I have more manufacturers, when I have more, back office operations, do you have real estate that I can actually offer them that is attractive enough to where we can win projects and win deals? And that's kind of the next big question that we have for Kannapolis.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Well, very well. Looking forward to hearing that announcement. So sometime in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, other questions for Robbie? I don't have so much as a question as a comment or a few comments. I like to talk about, particularly when we're talking about budgets and what are our expenses versus our investments. And the money that we spend on the Economic Development Corporation and the work that you do is, in my opinion, one of the best investments we make. I think that is evidenced by the things that you've just talked about in this presentation. $276 million in new tax base here in Cabarrus County. That is real. And then, Commissioner Honeycutt asked about the wages of those jobs. Just doing real rough math, with approximately 1,200 new jobs above the county average of about $40,000 per job. I mean, that's over $50 million in new wages that have come into Cabarrus County over the past year because of the efforts of all of us together, the municipalities, the county, the Economic Development Corporation leading that. That's $50 million that people are spending on groceries and rent and buying houses and automobiles and that's where our sales tax revenue comes from as well. So I mean, there's a huge, as you mentioned earlier, a huge multiplier effect with all of those things. And the other thing that I would mention and of course, I've been involved in economic development efforts for quite some time in Cabarrus County, but over the past year, I think I've been more directly engaged and had an opportunity to participate in some of these presentations and kind of see firsthand the work that you and your staff does on a daily basis. And I've got to tell you and everybody listening that you guys are tremendously impressive and really do an excellent job. A very small staff that does a lot of work. And I think the thing that has made an impression on me as much as anything else is obviously it's easy for us to celebrate the wins and the successes, and there have been quite a few. And that certainly is worthy of bragging about. But equally important is that a lot of folks don't get to see all the work that goes into the ones that we didn't get, and the level of activity and the work that you have to go through with every single inquiry that you receive, and to give it 100% every time to make sure that we have the greatest opportunity. A lot of those are, I've had an opportunity to be directly involved with several different international companies, and to understand the cultural differences and the things that they look at is more than I would have ever thought about. But all of those things are a part of the puzzle. So, I mean, kudos to you from dealing with those cultural differences and understanding what those clients are looking for, to dealing with water and sewer lines that are absolutely essential to making these properties desirable places for these companies to locate. The scope is tremendous, and I think you guys have done an excellent job. I commend you, and I appreciate the work that you have done for Cabarrus County.
Thank you. And it would, if I didn't get to say it, would be really important. And my board of directors, our investors, are so paramount to what we're trying to accomplish and what we do. But at the same time, my elected leadership, I get to serve this board, and as well with Mike Downs and his leadership as the board representative for the EDC. You guys are the team that enables us to do what we do. And what I mean by that is we can only be as effective as the leadership and the vision that you guys set for our team. I say that to our counties, and I also say that to each municipality. They have to develop the vision, and then our team will try to put the map together to how do we get there. But that's something that you guys have done such a phenomenal job. Our team, the people that I get to work around, have done just an absolutely outstanding job, and we're really excited for where we sit right now from an economic development standpoint, where we sit at today, and the opportunities that as to where we're going to go in the future. We have a very, very bright future, and it seems like we have the right members, the right team leadership all around us to get these things done.
Well, we are excited and you've got your work cut out for you, because we want you to bring back double these results next year. Yeah, so when you get to that level, that's not always easy to do, but we like lofty goals. Are there other questions or comments for Robbie and the Economic Development Corporation?
Mr. Chairman, I did want to make a couple of comments. Those of us that's on this line, the elected officials as well as Robbie and everyone else, we're fairly much aware of how the benefits of economic development, increased tax revenue, all of that work, because we deal with it pretty much all the time. But the average citizen that hopefully is watching this now or at some time in the future will realize how the economic development benefits them in more ways than just traffic. Traffic seems to always be the big thing: more people, more jobs, more industry, more land being taken up, all of that. That's true. But then again, though, Robbie, you were talking about, and we talked about the extra $2 million in revenue. That is close to a penny on the tax rate. And if you keep doing that every year after year, they may be a time, if you do like the chairman said, double it every year, there might be a time that we could actually bring the tax rate down at some point, if you could do that every year. But obviously, it all depends on the climate. But then again, there's just so more things to this, and but I just wanted to make those few comments to help further educate the people that's watching this that don't deal with it like we do. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Robbie. We appreciate that presentation.
Thank you so much.
Another hugely important piece of our economy here in Cabarrus County is our tourism industry. And we are delighted to have Donna Carpenter from the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I don't want to start the presentation off on the wrong foot, but I'm not sure that she is quite as happy and optimistic today as we are in other areas, but it's improving. It's going to get better. And so welcome, Donna. We're glad to have you with us, and we'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad, Mr. Chair, that you talked about lofty goals, because we have lofty goals this coming year. We've set those for ourselves, and economic development is such an important role in Cabarrus County, and it plays such an important role, and tourism is part of that. So we are thankful for our partnership with Robbie and his team. And so we will get started with our presentation this evening. I don't know who's running the video board. There we go. So I will tell you, we have addressed this budget multiple times and had to go back and redo it multiple times on a weekly basis for a little while as things were happening and changing. And I'd like to talk a few minutes not just about the CVB and our budget, but kind of the state of the industry as we are seeing it right now. I know our staff has sat in on more Zoom and webinars than we have ever done in our entire life. And we have been drinking information from a fire hose, and that information changes daily and weekly. So what we have right now is just kind of talking about that. I'm not going to read this all to you. You are very capable of reading yourself, but just a couple of the bullet points. And the biggest one for me is that travel-related job losses represents 38% of all job loss through April. And that equates to nearly 10 million Americans. That's a huge number. And when you're talking about recovery opportunities, this industry has to recover in order for the economy to recover. So we are looking forward to being part of that. The pandemic hit the travel industry worse than two of the most significantly devastating times in American history. It was worse than September 11th and or the Great Depression. So this kind of came out of nowhere. And as you all are aware, the travel and tourism industry, we're pretty resilient. And through a down economy not too long ago, we actually, our numbers went up. So we're not used to being hit hard like this. And it's been devastating. We've kept a smile on our faces, and we are all forever optimists. So we know we'll come out of this better, and hopefully without too many scars. There will be scars, and there are going to be losses that aren't going to be able to be salvaged, unfortunately. So anyway, we'll go to the next slide. Unless anybody has any questions on that national level, I'm happy to answer any of those before we move on to our local issues. Okay. So how has it affected us here in Cabarrus County? Well, you can see that about over 1,000 jobs, it's actually more like 1,500 total, have been furloughed and laid off just in the hotel industry alone. You know, that does not include all of those losses in restaurants and attractions and the retail sector of our economy. And these are our people who live in our community, who live and work here. So they have been displaced. We have lost $30,000 in lost hotel revenue, $1,800 in lost occupancy tax, $675,000 in lost local hotel sales taxes. We've had events canceled, and I will say NHRA, the spring race, auto fair, Epicenter Music Festival, which was just a huge hit for us. That event outperforms any other event that we host in our community, and not having that was a killer for us. And also the All-Star race. Now, the good news about the All-Star race is they just announced today that it will be running at Charlotte Motor Speedway on July 15th. They are working on whether or not there will be fans or no fans. So while having races at the track is, it's a sign of recovery, that it's the first sport out, and we are proud that that happened here in Cabarrus County. With it not happening with fans is a huge hit to our economy in the tourism industry, as well as just across the board. And as I just mentioned, the Coca-Cola 600 was run without fans. On a local level, as far as the organization is concerned, we did 6 permanent layoffs, 3 full-time and 3 part-time employees will not be returning. Those positions will no longer exist in our budget. And we have gone down to 6 staff members that are currently working right now. That is our leadership team, as well as our Julie Comforth Henson, who is our PR manager. She does all of our communications. And in an effort to make sure we maintain consistency, we kept Julie on too. So we went from 21 to 6 employees right now. We do hope to bring everyone back other than those 6 that were permanently laid off. You know, we said later in June in this slide, we've actually decided to push that into July, hopefully the early part of July. And so we'll see, you know, that depends on the rules from the governor's office on whether we can start hosting meetings and some gatherings as to when we will be bringing the rest of the staff back on board. Next slide. So what have we been doing? We just laid off those employees in May. So we were at full staff up until then. And we've been working very diligently in maintaining our relationships with our clients, reaching out, asking what we can do to help them. looking at rebooking business, anything that was on the books that had canceled. We tried not to put it in a canceled column, but a rebooked column for either later in the year or early next year. On a local level, we've kind of switched gears and really started focusing on our local community and providing information to our restaurants, our breweries and farms, doing weekly call-arounds to all of those places, getting their hours. Did they offer curbside? So we've been doing that. That's a huge job that everybody was part of doing and completing that information and making sure that that stayed up to date. We've been hosting webinars for our partners and anybody who wanted to join our Zoom webinars to talk about travel impacts, visitor sentiment research, recovery plans, anything that they need. We have been available to them to assist them. As far as advertising goes, we completely went dark, as did every other destination in the country. We saved about $300,000 in advertising spending since those stay-at-order homes were issued, and we've just been doing local social media, non-paid things to keep ourselves relevant, but not be pushy. And I already talked about that. We worked with our hotel partners to reschedule lost business. Next slide. Something we've been working just recently with the state of North Carolina and their travel department is a Count on Me NC program. And it is a business training program. It takes about 30 minutes to go through each of these segments of the training. And what we've learned from research is that visitor sentiment and what's going to be important to people when they begin to travel again is safety, cleanliness, and how do we exert that message to them that our places of business are following proper protocols and making that extra effort to make sure that they are safe. And the state presented this to us, and everyone across the state is pushing this. We have several of our partners who have already completed their training. Anyone who's listening, if you're interested, let us know. We're happy to send you the information and walk you through the process. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. It's just a matter of answering questions and making sure you're following the protocol and the guidelines that they've set in place for safety. And this is for any business that wants to participate, from restaurants to attractions to hoteliers. And this is another slide about that, so you can kind of see the different segments that will be coming in the future for the NC, Count on Me NC. Okay. Okay, some more research information. Destination Analyst is where we've been getting some of this information. A lot of people have been putting all of it out there. But the big question on this one was, do you feel that traveling together when the coronavirus situation is over would be good for your family? The good news in this, and again, being optimists that we are, 59% are saying yes, that they agree with this. So people will be back. They will travel again. It just might be a little bit different. And I think our destination is in a good place to be one of those destinations that they're going to want to come to. It's the larger destinations of the Disney worlds, and where large masses of people have to be in the same space. They're going to be a little slower to recover, but I do believe that we will be one of those destinations that will come back pretty quickly. Next slide. So this is excited versus not excited. So the question was, imagine that a good friend or close family member asks you to take a weekend getaway with them sometime in the next month. How excited would you be to go? Assume the getaway is a place you want to visit. So if you look at the not excited, that is going down and the excited is going up. This is all good news for us. And you can see at the top of the dates that they're looking at traveling. So the sentiment is starting to quickly come back, much quicker than actually I had expected. So this is all good news for us, and this is how we're planning our future. And when do we come out of the gate and start inviting people back to our destination? What travelers will avoid after coronavirus. This is a very telling slide. And if you look at this, you know, you can see that it does put us in a very good position as to being one of those destinations that people are going to want to come and visit. And the primary reason for their next leisure trip is vacation. Everyone has been cooped up. They're ready to get out. They're ready to go somewhere. And visiting friends and family, you can see, is second, and weekend getaways. And all of these things are things that we can really drive home. And look at the drive market is where we will first look at to start putting our messaging out there to get them to, we might be the shorter distance. So the state of North Carolina and those people who live here, we will be inviting them to come for long weekends, even visiting friends and family. Maximum distance from home. So you can see that this always is a good thing when they want to come further. So these are just information. I don't need to go through every single one of these, but good sentiment for us. States visited on your next leisure trip. You can see that North Carolina is in the middle of this list, which is amazing. That is good news for us that North Carolina is on that list. It's on the radar. They are doing a good job with less resources than they typically would have of getting our message out and keeping North Carolina top of mind. So key takeaways from all of that research. So approximately 2/3 of American travelers have a trip at least tentatively planned for 2020. Most of these trips are developed to some degree, but room for influence trip decisions clearly exists. So we have an opportunity to influence them to come to our destination. Trip distance thresholds may be further than initially anticipated. And safety is paramount to their planning and won't be far from travelers' minds while on their trips. So the availability of destination level information will be important. So making sure that our messaging is very clear that we are ready for them to come and visit, and our destination partners are ready for them to come and visit and have a safe and memorable vacation. And I think this is where Mr. Mills.
Yes, ma'am.
Is going to take over.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And so what I wanted to do was kind of dig into the data a little bit, so you can see that you just by driving around the hotels, looking at the parking lots, and you can see the impact that it's had. And of course, Donna got into some of that sentiment. But what I wanted to do is kind of share with you some data that we get on a weekly basis from Smith Travel Research, exactly on how well our hotels have been performing. So this chart starts, again, the middle of March 7th, ending week of March 7th, we were running at almost 70% occupancy. And then as you get into the next week, if you remember, that's kind of when the ACC tournament in Greensboro started shutting down. And then as you got into that March 21st, that was the week the stay-at-home order started to come into play. So we bottomed out the week ending of April 11th at 27.8% occupancy. Again, it is a roller coaster drop when you look at running at near 70% occupancy, which is where we were running, down to 27.8% occupancy. The good news, again, like Donna says, forever the optimist. For the last, there's 2 more weeks past this since we've submitted this presentation, but we've had increases every single week. So dropping from 27.8 all the way up to 38.2. This past week, last week, we went over 40%. So again, we're seeing a gradual incline in occupancy. The one thing that I will note when you look at this data is that all hotels are not treated or created equal, so to speak. Our limited service properties, our hotels up the interstate, exit 58, exit 60, have been performing better than our exit 49 hotels. You take Great Wolf Lodge that shut down in the middle of March, and their hopes are to try to be open by June 16th. Is what they're working towards with their playbook. Our largest convention center hotel with Embassy Suites has not been able to run near these numbers. So we have really been propped up a lot with our limited service properties and our extended stay properties. The next slide gets into actual average daily rates. So what are these hotels charging when people are staying? So again, near $93.59 before everything started. We bottomed out April 11th at 64.67. And like occupancy, and even for the last 2 weeks beyond this, what this chart shows, we've had increases. I will say though that rate has not come back as fast as demand, where rate has grown about 8% since that bottoming out. Occupancy has grown over 30%, and all industry trends nationally are pointing to demand will come back sooner than rate. Hotels will be trying to use rate as a means to try to bring people back into the hotels. So again, we will be encouraged to see more people here, but we expect rate to lag behind those increases in demand as we go along.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
On that regard, I mean, in the industry, they have to be talking about costs are going up.
Sure.
So does that mean they're just going to have to operate on less margin for a while to try to get people there? Obviously the cost of trying to do all of the cleaning that we're talking about, and it's not unique to them, it's everywhere. But what's the discussion on that?
No, that's a great point. And I can tell you it depends on the brand. There's been some brands that have tried to hold the line on rate, but some have tried to, drop rates, as you can see, to try to bring in a little bit of revenue. But you're correct. I think the margins are obviously going to be a little bit tighter. Obviously, they can balance, this with your staffing being one of your largest controllable costs. How much staffing are you bringing back to measure your occupancy? Great Wolf will be measuring their square foot analysis and how much of their facility will they be able to utilize when that next phase enters. And like Donna said earlier, every day is truly different. And where we think we're heading down a path, and then we get some news that something's changed. But you're correct, margins are going to be tight for a while. They will play the rate as much as they can to try to drive some revenue versus no revenue, but they'll have to balance those margins with their costs. You are correct, and you're correct. It's from a, what is it going to take? What are the standards going to look like, from shields in the lobbies to cleanliness standards? And this goes back to the Count on Me NC program. The cleanliness standards, they have to be maintained in the rooms to. Instead of moving from Embassy Suites that has a buffet style breakfast that you're able to do, removing maybe that portion of what they do with the buffet on breakfast, and something maybe is plated versus a buffet style. So there's lots of things to consider and evaluate this cost.
And Blake, if I could jump in there, we've had some of the conversation that we've heard is, cleaning your rooms. So when you check in, your room is clean when you check in, but you won't have any room cleaning until you check out. So they will be looking at things like that, and they're small things, but they make a big difference. So turning a room around is costly. So you'll have to keep your own room clean if you're staying for a week. So things like that.
Right. I think one of the other things, and at least I saw it this week while I was traveling, is that you have to take your trash and set it outside so that they will not come in your room to empty trash. And all of that, I mean, will take some getting used to, and we'll figure it out. But as far as, the food service may look totally different, because even, like you said, a buffet, that seems like, I don't know when that's ever coming back, but even the lounge area that does an a la carte style, well, currently they probably can sell some food, but you can't sit there and eat it. One of the worst things to do is sit in a hotel room all night. So that whole industry is going to change. So I was curious, and it was good to hear that you said the occupancy of your chart that was 2 weeks old had at least continued to grow and improve. So we'll just have to wait and see how that all shakes out. But that industry is going to change an awful lot.
Yeah, even down to they're going to have to make some big investments. That's the bigger issue. You know, key cards. Looking at key cards going away and you having to use your app to be able to unlock your door, which a lot of hotels are already doing that, but those that aren't are probably going to have to shift to doing some things like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see.
Which will take a significant capital investment.
Exactly.
Okay. On the next slide, we kind of give you a year-end picture, June 30, what we're looking like. And again, this really all kind of has been since the middle of March. And thankful to our team and our board as we've reacted and tried to reduce the loss as much as possible. So we're anticipating a $1.8 million loss. Again, Donna had that slide earlier, is a $30 million loss in revenue. It's from middle of March to through June, which equates to about $1.8 million in revenue. So that is a huge loss. The negatives that you see there are three major categories. So we've cut out $190,000 out of salary. We've cut out $113,000 out of fixed retail costs, administrative costs. And then on the sales and marketing side, we've cut $1.1 million. So losing revenue 1.8 and reacting to it and getting down to a net loss of 339. So we've cut $1.4 million, $1.5 million in expenses in a very short period of time. And again, thanks to our board and how we've been able to manage our finances through the year, we can absorb this loss and come out with to be able to still meet our reserve requirements within our fund balance, which is a 17% reserve requirement. So this loss, we can absorb that and still maintain that level. I can tell you, I talk weekly with CFOs and destinations all over the country, and there are destinations with much larger budgets with not the level of financial security we have. So we're very thankful that we're able to do that and maintain our operations and come out of this and be able to sell and market the way that we need to. So that's kind of how we end up 2020. For 2021, so we had a budget this year of almost $5.9 million. We are proposing a little over $5 million budget for next year. Our structure is still the same. 99% of our funding is the pass through the occupancy tax. We look at our revenue on a month-to-month, week-to-week basis when we do forecasting and analysis, and we look at events that might be coming or might not be canceling. So I want to go through some of these. We do expect a softer first quarter. So again, July, August, and September. All the data supports leisure will come back first and transient before groups and meetings. While we have worked with a lot of the clients and our hotel properties with Embassy and the other group meeting facilities to get business rebooked, we were able to do a lot of that later in 2020 in the fall and then into 2021. So we were able to, the focus was postpone your meeting, don't cancel your meeting. So we were able to do a lot of that, but again, it's just going to depend on how does that look as things shift in the fall. As I said earlier, demand's going to come back faster than rate. And that third bullet point, when this was going on, we were not sure what was going to happen with RNC. I can tell you that our hotels have a lot of them basically have contracted, had contracts in place with RNC for when those rooms got placed and state delegations and those type of groups as they worked on that. Again, as you all know, we submitted this presentation a week ago, but in the last couple of days, those discussions, obviously, there's some shifting that's going on, as you're all aware. But I can tell you that I held back our projections. I did not include any RNC revenue potential, which could be substantial, quite substantial when you go back to 2012. Look at the DNC and what it brought to our destination. $3 million in hotel revenue over a period of a week. It's one of those things where we held back because we weren't sure what was going to go on with coronavirus and whether it would happen. And of course, those, as you're aware, discussions are going place fall races again are still planned to occur. Again, looking at those models, will they have fans? Again, we're planning on some soft return to that. And then again, as we talked about, rebooked group business. So a lot of soft numbers that you will see July through October and somewhat into November. And then by the time we get to December, we kind of flatten out. And we hope to be a little closer to where we were, maybe 2017-ish kind of numbers, somewhat of 2018. And then hopefully we'll see that going forward. On the next slide, so now that you have the revenue, this is how we break out our revenues. The left side is how our peers in the industry allocate those dollars. And the chart on the right side is how we allocate those dollars. So with the changes that Donna mentioned with our staff layoffs, we were able to, and not replacing those positions in next year's budget, we were able to bring our percentage of people back down to 28.7% or 1.4 million of our total budget. There will be no merit increases next year. So we've obviously the staff is aware of that. So that none of that will be taking place. Whereas historically we've had an up to 3% based on performance and merit, but there will not be any of those in place for next year. Administrative costs at 12.8%. For us, our admin fee sits there. So while it's $648,000 of our total budget, $252,000 of that is the 5% the county retains to collect that money. So that is part of the I guess the negative side of this. When you look at revenues dropping, the county retains 5% for collections for an admin fee and 5% for the sports fund development. And of course, when the revenues go down, those numbers go down equitably. But they're still planning on $250,000 coming back to the county on the 5% admin and $250,000 on the sports side as well. On the sales and marketing side, $3 million of our budget. So again, that's our mission, that's our vision. And we were basically able to maintain all of our advertising budget except for about $30,000 next year. As we've said, advertising, we're waiting to see. We're monitoring. We're working with the state. Our senior VP of marketing they've been working with our agency on different campaigns to tell that safety message. Focus on the drive markets, which is really good for us. And we've eliminated some travel that's maybe conference related, but if there's trade shows that are going to take place, and our sales team need to get to them to try to continue to book that group business. And again, that's corporate meetings, youth sporting tournaments, whatever it might be. We're going to go to those shows. But we're evaluating every single show and every single dollar, and this goes into next year. So, the key thing for us, and you can see that when you look at that 2020 slide I showed you a second ago, we build budgets to be flexible. One of the things about our organization, when you're a sales and marketing organization, you're not a capital-based. You don't have to have we don't spend a lot of money in capital projects. So as the revenue fell off a cliff, we were able to react quickly and absorb almost all of that loss. So again, thanks to the team. So the last slide is just our total budget again for you, and that's $5,075,950 is what we're proposing for 2021. And I guess Don and I will take any questions anyone might have regarding the budget and what we're expecting to see.
Questions for John or Donna? I guess it goes without saying that you have built in a great deal of flexibility in this budget because of so many unknowns that you can react quickly as you have this past year, should those projections go awry. I think we're all in that boat.
Yes, just, making sure that we can stay nimble and not go under. That is our goal, and still maintain, a certain level of sales and marketing that we can. There are other CVBs in the state of North Carolina that aren't faring nearly as well as we are, and they may not make it through this. They may not exist when this is over. They'll come back eventually once that money builds back up again. But like John said, because our board has, for the 11 years that I've been here, we've always had a board that set the standards of making sure that we kept a 17% reserve and that we maintained that. And, we always used to say, we used the analogy that, God forbid a tornado went down the boulevard and wiped everything out. Well, this was our tornado. And, it was like the water spigot has been running full blast for 11 years and someone just turned it off. And, you can look at our budget and look at our organization and see that we are going to survive. and we will come out of this and we'll get back to it. But what I really, really hope everyone understands is the hit that our hotels and our restaurants, our restaurants are hanging in there. There's been some help with them being able to stay open and do some takeout. But our attractions haven't been open at all. So there's been absolutely no revenue coming in, iFly and the mall for a while. And so, this is devastating to our employees. Those employees, then they're not always the highest paying jobs anyway. And so, anything that we can do, that we could do, we've been trying to assist in any kind of assistance for those employees. And, if somebody calls and needed some hand sanitizer or something and we had it, we were happy to share that. And we will still be there for those purposes. And we may reach out and have some other kind of fundraiser. Who knows? It's just one of those things where you feel so helpless that there's really nothing that we can do right now other than, our hotels are open because they were essential. And those restaurants, pushing our local people into those restaurants to now at least be able to go and sit down and have a meal, but continue takeout. Our caterers, they've had to reinvent themselves. And they've done a really great job in doing so. But the thing is once they, now that the restaurants, you can go in and sit down, now the problem is now the caterers now once again have to reinvent themselves one more time. But anyway, we're not definitely the only industry that's been affected by this. Everyone has been affected by this. And, we're grateful to have wonderful partners, and the hospitality and tourism industry is just a big giant family. And I'm proud to be part of it, and proud to be part of it in Cabarrus County. So.
Thank you.
Donna, what are you hearing about the mall and the kind of traffic they're getting since they've opened?
I think they're doing okay. It's one-off, not all of the stores are open. Some of them are open and you can only for pickup. I can tell you from firsthand experience that to get into TJ Maxx, you have to wait in line outside. So retail, I think, is doing okay, all things considered. The project, here's the good news. The flyover project is moving forward, and those are the little things that we're just holding on to. Is here's the good news. It's moving forward so that when everything opens back up, hopefully that will be finished. The turf fields are still in the process. Cox Mill High School looks amazing, and I think they're working on Robinson right now. They had some drainage issues, and so we are ready to put people on those fields as soon as they will allow us to. And so just crossing our fingers and pushing people into our community as best we can, safely.
Great. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, Donna, I'm a huge fan of everything that the CVB has been doing all the years. I always talk about how much you saved us during the Great Recession, and hopefully now it's the time that everybody in Cabarrus County locally will look at your industry and will find ways to help save it. It's vitally important for us in Cabarrus County, and I know we all know that, and I think most people in the community understand that. It's just hard to understand when, or I guess to realize the impact when you talk about Great Wolf Lodge and Embassy Suites, for example, not being in business. And that is huge, and the number of employees that they have. So to probably speak for, not to speak for the other commissioners, but I'm sure they would all agree with me. We've been very fortunate to have you, John, and your staff at the CVB, all the work that you've done all these years. And you always work really hard. Your whole team does. You do a great job promoting us in Cabarrus County, doing exactly what you're supposed to do. And you're right, we'll come out of this, but it's going to take a while. We have been patronizing local businesses, restaurants, what we can, and tip greater than suggested, if you will, because we know those people are struggling. And I hope the other people in Cabarrus County are doing the same thing. If you feel safe enough to be able to get takeout, please do. And when you do that, 15% is not enough of a tip. You need to tip them more because they are struggling. And but I do want to know and say to you and John, and please relay to everybody on your team how much we appreciate everything you've done and that you continue to do. And on a different note, please tell your husband we appreciate everything that he does, because I know he's been working very hard lately.
Thank you. We appreciate you all. Our team is ready to get back. We keep in touch with them, and they all keep going, when can we come back to work? When can we come back to work? I said, well, you're making more sitting at home than you are, but they don't care. They're ready to come back to work. So we're ready for them too.
Any other questions or comments for Donna or John? Well, before we move to action on your budget, I did want to mention, I think that John has a very generic, office-y looking background, but yet it looks like you have a travel theme on yours, Donna. That's a pretty elaborate looking travel vehicle you have there.
It's a virtual background. Just kidding.
Okay.
I am on vacation this week, a scheduled vacation that we said we were not going to cancel unless the governor wouldn't let us. So I am working on vacation.
Yes, well,
I don't know if vacation's really a good word for it, because I think I've worked harder on vacation than I have on a regular week, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll do it.
We're glad you took time out to visit with us tonight.
Thank you.
Commissioners, as is tradition, it is requested that we suspend our rules and take action on approval of the CVB's budget tonight. So at this time, I would entertain a motion that we suspend the rules to take action.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Shue, a second by Commissioner Honeycutt. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. That motion passes, and at this time, I would entertain a motion that we approve the Cabarrus Convention and Visitors Bureau budget for fiscal year 2021 in the amount of $5,075,950.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kiger and a second by Commissioner Shue and a third by Commissioner Honeycutt, if that makes it stronger. But is there any further discussion on the CVB budget? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. That motion passes unanimously. And thank you again for that presentation. We are all looking forward to brighter days ahead.
For sure. And thank you all for all your support and your continued support. And if there's anything that we can do for any of you, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. So thank you very much.
Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. Hey, and just because I'm in this doesn't mean I'm not sitting in my yard, because I was doing it Zoom meetings from the camper in my yard in Cabarrus County, because just as a change of pace. So
Understand.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, we now have our Fire Marshal, Mr. Steve Langer, with us to talk about our fire districts. You all have a pretty significant amount of information in your workbooks about our fire districts and what the most specifically the revaluation has done to their revenue. Welcome, Fire Marshal Langer. We'll turn the program over to you.
Well, good evening. Thank you very much. So we were asked to put together a justification summary sheet to kind of highlight the potential increase in funding that the departments would see from the reevaluation. So hopefully you have that before you that kind of highlights that, as well as the justification that was provided from each of the departments. I think it's worth noting that, with typically revenue neutral, most of your departments would see a decrease in their fire tax rate. However, with Midland, that they have the opposite effect. It would actually increase their fire tax rate. So they are asking to keep their tax rate the same as well. Looking through the justifications from the departments, for the majority of them, that you can see that they are looking to try to increase their staffing or their staffing hours, or providing additional pay to the paid staffing that they have. While some of the departments, look like they're going to see a significant increase in funding, all of the departments, we just heard from the CVB about the loss of tax funding. The departments are also looking at a loss of sales tax. So for an example, if you're looking at Allen, Allen looks to see an increase in their fire tax of about $46,000. However, there's an estimate of $20,000 lost in sales tax. So their actual gain is only around $27,000. So if there's any questions related to the information that I can answer, I would love to answer. And if there's anything that we need to reach out to the fire departments to get. Gain additional information for you, definitely let me know.
Okay, commissioners, do you have questions for Mr. Langer? You've done a very good job of explaining each one of these individually, and it has answered a lot of questions, and certainly do appreciate you pointing out that impact of that lost sales tax revenue, which is certainly a big factor as well.
Could we get a spreadsheet that shows the sales tax loss for each of those alongside with what you've already provided? I think that's important for each of the fire districts to understand, and for their general population that are in those districts to understand. I think is it Coldwater that had a really, really small increase? Or I don't know if that was a typo or not, but I mean, some of them could, their increase could potentially be less than their losses, so they could have a net difference that's a loss. I think that would be good for everybody to know that. So if I were a homeowner in Allen's fire district, I might think, wow, they're getting a whole lot more money, when in reality they're getting about half that amount. So that might be helpful for us to know and make sure that the residents in each of those fire districts understand the impact.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely put a spreadsheet together to show the potential increase, and then the loss for the sales tax and what that actual gain really is. And you're right, for some of them it is very, very little that they would actually see. I think like Flow Store with theirs, after the loss of sales tax, they're only really looking at about $3,900 in gain by keeping their tax rate the same.
And of course, figuring that sales tax loss is going to require the use of your crystal ball to a great extent.
I'm going to have to use Susan Farrington's crystal ball.
Exactly. Well, she's very good at that. So that's a good resource. But really and truly, we are all trying to project and predict what those impacts are going to be. And I'm sure we're going to get it right in some regards and not right in other regards. So it is a prediction and a projection, not an exact figure. And I think just for benefit of the public, the impact, we are just now in June, we'll learn what the sales tax impact was for March, because there is a 3-month lag on those figures coming back to us. So there's a lot of guessing going on right now.
Yeah, definitely. And even with the property tax, we're estimating what it's going to be, but really we won't know until next year, how that has impacted the fire departments as well. Exactly.
Well, our volunteer fire departments do a tremendous job. They are a tremendous asset to the county. We appreciate what they do, and we're always trying to determine how we can better support them and provide that benefit to our citizens. So please extend that thank you on our behalf to them. We don't communicate directly all that often in order to say that.
Definitely.
Other questions about the fire districts? Okay, well, we thank you very much for that presentation, and I'm sure we'll get that additional information. And you just did a tremendous job of getting us back on schedule because we were about a half hour off, and now we're only 7 minutes. So we come to this part in the program where once again we have scheduled a break to be followed by general board discussion. So what would be your pleasure, commissioners? Would you like to take a short break, or would you like to proceed ahead?
I'm fine with proceeding ahead.
I see head nods, so we will proceed ahead, and I will turn it back over to the county manager at this point if he has additional information or items that he would like to share with us for consideration.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This does conclude staff's presentation on the proposed FY21 budget. It's been quite a process. Hopefully you've got the information you need. If there is anything else between today and Monday when the public hearing is going on, please let us know. We will make sure we get that to you as soon as possible. Again, I'm excited about the budget that we proposed, and I would be remiss, and I will do it again Monday night to explain or to thank Rodney Harris and Lauren Tiara and Yesenia for what they've done. We've prepared this budget without a budget manager or a budget director. We're still in the process of filling that position. So they have all three had double and triple time working through that process along with our department heads, and it's really turned out very nicely. But I did want to make sure at this time, I know it probably wasn't the appropriate time, but I want to make sure before we hang up on this thing that we do it today and then do it again on Monday night. But with that, we will take any questions that or concerns that you have right now that you want to discuss tonight, or if you want some more information on what you heard tonight or what you heard on Tuesday evening as well.
Mike, let me see if I'm on here. Yeah. I just wanted to pass on to you and your staff and to my fellow commissioners that yesterday, no, it wasn't yesterday, it was, yeah, it was yesterday. Anyway, I got a call from the former mayor, Scott Padgett. He called me and just to tell me that he had reviewed the budget and that he thought that it was one of the best budgets that he had ever seen. And he was speaking very highly of the budget and all the things that we've been able to accomplish and the things that we're planning on doing. And he said it was very impressive to him. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to pass it on to you guys because, you know, you guys are the one that did the work. You know, we just look at it and throw in our 2 cents worth. But I, for one, concur with what the mayor said, and I appreciate all that everybody's done, because I know you worked hard, you've been shorthanded, but yet you still rose to the occasion, and we've got an excellent proposed budget, and I feel like that there won't be no issues. Now we just got to get our economy back rolling again, put this coronavirus behind us, hopefully, with phase 3 coming soon, and hopefully we're going to have a much brighter future than what we've had. So with that, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I will mention that when you talk about the public hearing on Monday night, it is not this coming Monday, but the following Monday, June 15th.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have an entire week, the entire week next week, to continue to study this, to ask questions, seek clarification if there's anything that anybody needs additional information on. You know, I'd add one thing to what the county manager said about the preparation of this budget. Not only they have actually prepared this budget twice. There was the initial budget before we saw dramatic changes in the financial picture of the county and our economy, and so I'm sure that there was probably an equal amount of work that took place in going back and reevaluating all those positions and double checking and adjusting income projections and all of that other, as I called it earlier, crystal ball work that goes into trying to predict how things are going to turn out. So that was a lot of extra work, for which, and we're very appreciative of that. I was privileged to be on a Zoom call earlier today with, I think it was probably about somewhere around 16 to 20 other counties in North Carolina. I think Commissioner Poole was involved in that call as well. As County Manager Downs. And so we had an opportunity to hear from a lot of other counties talking about their budgets and how they were handling things. I think that that we are faring better than many than I heard discussed. It's quite interesting to hear some of the counties say, well, you know, sales tax is really not that important to us. It really doesn't have an impact on our budget. And to make the comparison to see what a huge impact that makes on our budget and how blessed we are to have the amount of retail and the amount of sales tax revenue that we have. I think you can only really appreciate that when you hear from some of these other counties that are in a much different position. So that I thought was very educational. So are there any additional discussions or questions or comments before we adjourn tonight? We've got extra time for a change.
Yeah, I guess, Rodney, this is your opportunity. If there's anything that you need to add from our original presentation and through last week's Tuesday's workshop and then tonight, have you got anything you need to add?
Yeah, fortunately, I do not. The only thing I would add is, and I know you all are already aware of this, is I see her smiling face on the bottom of my screen, is Susan Farrington, our finance director. We are fortunate to have among the best, if not the best, finance director in the state. And she works tirelessly and has worked tirelessly to get us to this point in doing these sales tax projections repeatedly, looking at our property tax revenue. So I just wanted to thank her for all of her efforts to get us to this point.
Thank you for that, Rodney. I
Absolutely.
I apologize for leaving you out on my list. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fire marshal said, she's got one of the better crystal balls in Cabarrus County, making those projections. So we certainly appreciate it. Okay, well, if there is nothing else, we thank everyone. As I mentioned beginning, we've spent 3 nights together this week, and all 3 of those meetings have been televised, so we very much appreciate the public and the television audience that has been watching. We hope that we have given our citizens a better understanding of the budget and the budget process, and also provided them with some tools to get answers to any questions that they might have. You can go to the county website. You will find there listed all the methods of how you can participate in our public hearing on June the 15th to bring forth comments that you might have. There are also some online workshops regarding the budget that are very informative. If you're more interested, there are instructions there as how to sign up for those sessions also. So we want as much involvement as we can from our community. This is the budget that we, our staff, and has presented to us to meet the needs of our community, which is what we're all about. So please reach out to any of us if you have any questions, or if you would like any additional information on any of these other resources that are available, and we'll do our very best to help you with that. And so if there is no other business, then at this time I would entertain a motion that this meeting be adjourned.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Shue. I heard a couple of seconds. I couldn't tell where they came from out there. I'll attribute it to Commissioner Honeycutt. So any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And we stand adjourned. Thank you again for joining us tonight.